destruction of the 3 World Trade Center towers in New York City on September 11, 2001, and a whole lot more. This is 9/11 Freefall. I'm Bernie Suarez, and I'm here with Andy Steele. Hello, everybody. Welcome to 9/11 Freefall. This is a program which is primarily committed to the scientific evidence surrounding the events of 9/11. We're committed to exposing the official story of 9/11, and we're committed to bringing additional attention to architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth. People, this is a non-profit organization dedicated to the pursuit of academic truth with respect to the events of 9/11. Andy Steele. Hey, Andy. Welcome to the show today. How are you doing today?
Well, I'm fired up this week, Bernie, and when I'm fired up, it's usually a mix of hope and anger, and that applies today. I'm going to kind of go off into a little rant at the beginning of this show, and this is the reason we put the disclaimer on it, because the opinions expressed on this show don't necessarily reflect the opinions of architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth. It's a separate organization. We're our own people, and sometimes we got to comment. We keep everything focused on the science of 9/11, but to drive home why the science of 9/11 is so important, we sometimes have to step out of that box to show the big picture. And, just a quick point I want to make this week. I'm watching in the political world, and, I'm not going to get into politics or about ideology or anything like that, but you see everybody getting sucked into the same traps that they were sucked into 4 years ago. And it's because Obama right now is announcing his vice presidential running mate this week, and people are excited. They're emphatic. And I say Obama because I really don't see any difference between any of these people. I call the previous guy Obusha and the new guy Obama.
I have another name for it. I call it the Obamni campaign, but that's just me. Go on.
However you want to slice and dice it. And, again, we don't want to get into politics or ideology because that's not what this show is about, but I see the same pattern repeated, even among people that I respect, people who I know better, and it's this idea that somehow if we just get behind some politician, that somehow he's just going to come in and fix everything. If we just get out the current guy and we put in this new guy from the same two-headed monster, that this is somehow going to fix everything, and it overlooks the reality of what we're facing right now. And people ask us when we do this program, why are you still talking about September 11th, 11 years later? There's other things happening. There's death of civil liberties. They're beating the drum for new wars. Why do you keep focusing on this? It's because people lose focus. I talk about this, and it's almost a tired point that I keep beating it over and over, but it's so true, is that this reality, pulls the rug out from under everything that's going on right now. And I use this analogy this week. Mm-hmm. Imagine that you're a woman and you meet a great, charming guy, and during your courting session he tells you, well, my previous wife died, I'm a widower. Right. So you end up falling in love with him, you marry him, but then when you're married to him, he starts exhibiting abusive behavior. Nothing that you personally deem worthy of leaving him, but things that are alarming to you. And you're working on your marital problems, and he says, okay, honey, I'm going to go to anger management, and we're going to try to work this out. And you say, okay, well, he's working on it. Maybe he can get over this. Well, one day you go into his storage shed, let's say, and you find his ex-wife's body in a freezer sitting there. Now, wow. Are you still going to be focusing on, well, he's going to anger management and we're working it out and maybe he can get over this? What do you do with this new reality that you've just discovered, okay? Now, it seems like the most logical thing would be to go crazy screaming down the street into the police station and get into protective custody and have him arrested. Well, that's what 9/11 Truth is. It's the body in the freezer in the basement of America. And I see all these people getting all excited about this political pageant that absolutely means nothing in the big scheme of the world. They're not going to do anything that's going to change anything for you, for the American people. Okay? What saves America is 9/11 Truth. All right? What saves America is you. And that's a big responsibility that falls on the individual's shoulders. And in every society, there's always a small faction of people that will stand up and fight the machine that seeks to oppress them, while the rest stay in their houses. Well, this is a call out to those people, because you need to stand out over all of the voices that are just chanting political mantras that mean nothing. And how awesome would it be if during this whole pageant weekend, when Romney announces his new vice presidential pick and everybody's focusing on it like this actually means something, to have one of these speeches interrupted by a 9/11 truth protester. It would be great. And you see this like in even within our circles, where people are worried about making people outsiders angry. They're worried about how is this going to be perceived if I do this. Well, you know what, folks? We're digging up the septic system of America with this issue. Okay,
absolutely.
It's a broken septic system. We're not, we didn't create the situation. We're exposing the truth, and when you do this, things are gonna be messy. There's no call for violence here, but we do need to speak out, and we need to start screaming, because the direction we're heading is not one that we want to follow.
Wow, that's so well said. I mean, Andy, we're talking from dead bodies in a freezer to the broken septic system. Excuse me. And I recall weeks ago you talked about putting that teddy bear, that gigantic teddy bear, in the tiny little suitcase. You are one incredible analogy guy, and I'll have to start paying you a few bucks to give me some more analogies that are so great. And they really strike home. Of course, I'm kidding about that part of it. But, I mean, that's an incredible analogy. Thank you so much. That is so true. And when are people going to wake up? Well, here's one group that's woken up, and that's called Architects and Engineers. We want to remind our audience to go to Architects and Engineers. That's AE911truth.org. You can go there, and there's a lot of people here who run this organization, who are leaders in this organization, and have woken up, and they're doing the best that they can to get this information out there. So that's one thing I want to mention. You talked about a disclaimer. Obviously, the opinions in the show are not necessarily the opinions of Architects and Engineers, but we do talk a lot about the science on this website. That's part of this group, and it's on this website. So I just want to throw that in, Andy, because there are a lot of people that are doing something about it. And one of the, in this organization, Architects and Engineers, hey, everybody, you want to improve your life? Maybe you're bored with your life. Maybe you need a little change in your life. Maybe you need a little energy, a different sense of purpose. Any of those apply to you? Well, go to AE911truth.org, and maybe you will find your purpose, because on this website, people, you will find that there are 1,702 or 1,703 architects and engineers who signed a petition, and quite a few others have signed a petition that are not architects and engineers. 14,953 other supporters have signed a petition for a new investigation to get that body out of the freezer, as you say, Andy, and to clear up that septic system. And in this website, I just want to mention, people have, there's a lot of links here. You can go click on evidence. I was noticing the website this week, some of the stories going on. We've talked about this the last few weeks. There is a tour going on. A couple of ladies, one by the name of Pamela Senzi, another one by the name of Rena Patty, have taken to the road with this message as they attempt to clear up the septic system of America and everything that you're saying. So they're on a bike ride right now that's going to take them, I believe, some 3 months or so, and they're heading from the West Coast in Washington State, heading all the way out to Building 7 in New York City, and we want to let our audience know that they can go to AE911truth.org and read more about that. There's an article right there on the first page about that tour. Any updates that we know on the tour, Andy, or...
Well, you can go to Journey for Truth, and you can read their blogs, and they do a good job of chronicling this. But, it's not just them, having an adventure across the country. They're talking to people as they go through. They're handing out DVDs. They're spreading the truth.
That's right.
And this is this is a big demonstration of what we need to be doing nationwide. I just gave my the grocery clerk in the store next to where I live a DVD this afternoon, and so if you can go to AE 911 Truth and purchase DVDs and have a bunch of them to give out when when people talk about this. That's one way of doing this. And this whole journey for truth, it's a great idea that these ladies are doing, and they're showing it in a big dramatic way with this bike ride.
And there's a lot of other things going on this website. I was just scrolling through here to see what else is going on, what other articles. One article that caught my eye is there's one about the BBC campaign. It's called BBC campaign shifts into second gear. So there's an effort here to hold the BBC accountable. Essentially, the BBC has been very central in their documentaries and their stance on 9/11, and a lot of us are calling for BBC to be held accountable for spreading basically what amounts to lies about the event, things that are simply not true, and they have perpetuated. There's a lot of entities out there, Andy, that have, in their own way, and a lot of people don't want us, or just truthers in general, or truth seekers, to demonize, if you would, these organizations. But the fact holds true that a lot of these organizations, like the BBC, are doing their part to keep this 9/11 official story narrative going, and this is as you put it, the dead body in the freezer, keeping that narrative going that is simply not true. And as a result of that narrative, we're seeing a lot of changes, a lot of things are happening, not only here in the U.S., but globally, in terms of people's rights being violated. We have drone attacks. We can go on and on. A lot of domestic terror allegations here all over the place, where now average Americans are being accused and portrayed as terrorists. So that goes on. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you talk about, people are worried about demonizing these institutions. They're demonizing themselves with their censorship. And we're going to be going over a very obvious example of that later in the show. But we need to get out of this mindset as a movement and just as average Americans that we're somehow outcasts in a police state and that we need to hide in our houses and keep our voices low. The fact is, the people who perpetrated this crime, like the officials at NIST that are covering it up, these are the people that are causing the problems. They're the ones who introduced this problem to us in the first place,
right.
And we're on the side of law and order here.
That's
in
right.
this movement, and we need to reassert that in our minds.
Absolutely. So we're going to move on. We've got a lot of content, and we're going to be talking about explosions and testimonies and all kinds of stuff, and we'll see how much time. We'll probably run out of time like we always do. We have so much content to cover. Before we go any further, we're going to take a customary 10 seconds of silence to remember the victims of 9/11 and their families, and all of us that have been hurt by the events of 9/11. Let's take 10 seconds for that. Okay, and with that, we want to remind our audience, we do this just out of courtesy to the family members of the victims, and just to remind people, and it keeps me focused, as I always say, on why we're doing this. This is about justice. This is about siding with what is right. And I believe there's a lot of people in our audience that believe in that there is a right and a wrong, that there is a thing, such a thing as justice. And that's what this is about. And with that, what do we have this week? Well, one thing I like to do, and, we'll just... let's just, and I know we have a lot of content to cover, so I don't want to spend too much time recapping what we talked about last week. For those of you that are listening to us for the first time, this 9/11 Freefall show, what we've been doing, like every other week or so, we get different guests on as much as we can, and then some other weeks we just talk about different issues. Last week, we were privileged to have Jonathan Cole on board with us, and he interviewed with us, talked about many of his experiments. For those of you who do not know who John Cole is, please feel free to go to 911speakout.org is one of the websites that he runs along with David Chandler, 911speakout.org, and he also has a YouTube channel called Physics and Reason. And ladies and gentlemen, you go to that YouTube channel, you're going to be there for a very, very long time, because this gentleman has done an incredible job of putting together experiments and it's kind of like actions greater than words approach. And boy, has he put together the action. He's got experiments where he literally mixes the thermite and shows you what the thermite can do. He's got a video on NIST versus Newton versus NIST or NIST, and just kind of recapping. One thing, Andy, I wanted to mention, an observation that I made, and it's good for our audience to hear that. Over the last few weeks, we had David Chandler on board here interviewing with us, as well as John Cole last week, and I invited them on just deliberately, just so they can explain Newton's laws and the science of 9/11 just as clear as they can. A few weeks before that, of course, I took a crack at it, and one of the things that I kind of stepped back when speaking to David Chandler. I recall he said something to the effect of, to gain force, you must lose momentum. And then when you fast forward to when we were speaking with John Cole last week, he made a comment about less force when you see acceleration. In other words, there's going to be less force being applied when there is acceleration, when you see the acceleration. So, essentially, and it may sound a little confusing to people, but essentially it's approaching Newton's laws from two different ends. And without really dwelling on this any further, I know we've got a lot of material, but the bottom line is that when John Cole said that, he was talking about Newton's third law. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction, and he so well meticulously explained the issue of forces. The building, the bottom part of the building has a force that resists and pushes up, and the top part of the building has a force that pushes down. So without understanding the fundamentals of Newton's laws, it's very easy to get confused and distracted by these individuals that are out there talking about the pile driver theory and all the work the NIST put out through their computer model simulations. Big difference between computer model simulations and science.
Well, you're right about that, and part of the trick is you can speak confidently when you control reality through computers and computer models, and then you don't have to release the data. Okay. So this is what they're doing. They portray this image as if what they're saying makes sense, but when you actually look at it in principle, it does not make sense. And that's why we're on the air bringing on people like Jonathan Cole and David Chandler to explain this. And you can see these demonstrated. And something that really stuck with me from Jonathan Cole's videos and from last week's interview is experiments, not words. That expression. Show it, don't say it.
Show it, don't say it. And that's what he's all about. We're so privileged to have him on. And those two gentlemen, we could easily have them on again. There was so much material that we could cover with them since they've done so much work. But well, we'll leave it at that, and that's, we brought them on to once again hammer away at Newton's laws and the basic laws of science, because this stuff is high school science. This is not some deep issue that you have to have engineering degrees or some special graduate degree or anything to understand. This is basic Newton's laws, summing up the forces. Force equals mass times acceleration. So anyone who's wants to hear about that, we welcome you to go to 911freefall.com and listen in on any of those shows. They are available on the website, 911freefall.com. So, okay, so what we have this week, we're going to be talking about explosions, people. And without any further ado, what we're going to do right now, people, we want to introduce an audio from a gentleman by the name of William Rodriguez. This audio is so powerful. Why don't we just play that right now and we'll go from there. Let's listen in. William, tell us what happened on 9/11.
That morning, I was supposed to be there at 8 o'clock in the morning every day. I called my supervisor because I was not going to work. I was going to take a sick day. Made it there at 8:30 in the morning. Go straight to the lobby, down to the basement. The building has 6 sub-levels of basement, B1, B2, all the way down to B6. Basement 6, basement 5, all the way up to basement 1, were all Port Authority areas. Some of them have parking for tenants, some of them have storage. B1 office, B1 level, is what they have the support office for my company, the cleaning company, American Building Maintenance. So I was talking to the supervisor, and at 8:46 we hear boom! An explosion so hard that pushes us upwards in the air, upwards. And it came out from below us, from the mechanical room that was right below us. And it was so loud and so powerful that all the walls cracked, the false ceiling fell on top of us, the sprinkler system got activated, and everybody started screaming so loud because they didn't know what was going on. And the first thing I'm going to say is that a generator just blew up on the B2 level, the level below me. And everybody's screaming. And when I'm going to verbalize it, 6 to 7 seconds after, we hear, bah! The impact all the way on the top of the building of the plane. Two different events separated by almost 7 seconds, separated by time. And now, I work in the building for 20 years. I know the difference of a sound coming from the top and one from the bottom. So when everybody started, what the heck is going on? A person comes running into the office saying, explosion, explosion. His hands extended, all the skin pulled from under his armpits, on both arms, hanging. And we thought it was clothing. It was part of his clothes. Until he gets closer, he was coming like this, like a zombie. Explosion, explosion. And when I looked at him, I realized it was his skin, like when you take off a glove and you let it hanging. When I get to see his face, all this part was hanging of his face. And everybody started screaming in horror. And I say, don't move. The guy was a black guy named Felipe David. Worked for a company called Aramark.
There you go, people. Amazing testimony from the horse's mouth. William Rodriguez, ladies and gentlemen. Let's talk a little bit. And by the way, people want to know more about him. You can always go to his site, william911.com. Hey, the guy's got his own site and everything. Why not? This guy, this is the Magic Key guy. I know they gave him some sort of nickname, the Key Man or something like that, or whatever it is. You could probably go on his site and see what it is. But so people understand, this is a gentleman that had worked, as he mentions in this testimony, he had worked in the World Trade Center for 20 years. Now, I gotta admit, I gotta tell you now, I'm actually originally from New York, and when I was younger, I worked as a messenger, those delivery messengers, a couple times in my youth when I was a teenager. And I certainly rode around in the World Trade Center myself, got in those elevators, so I was familiar. And I got to tell you right now, in fact, I had a very good friend of mine when I was much younger, a very good friend of mine who actually worked just like William Rodriguez. He's actually a maintenance guy there who had worked there for many, many years. And when you work in a building for 20 years and your main office is in the first sub-level of the basement level of the World Trade Center, you're going to know that building, and you're going to know an explosion below you when it blows people back, and when you notice that the walls are cracked everywhere and the sprinkler system is activated. And the most powerful part of that interview we just listened to is amazing to hear him say it, when he says, basically, quote, 2 different events separated by 7 seconds, and how he describes some 7 seconds later the very first plane impacts. So, before we get Andy's take on this, here's the question of the week. And we have not done question of the week, right? Probably people listening in who have listened in before probably thought we forgot the question of the week, but we haven't. Here it is. I was waiting to play that. Question of the week. What could cause an explosion in the B2 level 7 seconds before the first plane hits? There you go. What could cause an explosion in the B2 level 7 seconds before the first plane hit, given the circumstances? Somebody wants to say it wasn't an explosive device. right before the impact of the plane, of the very first plane? Well, justify that. Tell us what your evidence is, and based on what? Because you just heard from the key man. This guy here he ends up opening up doors. For those of you who are not familiar with the story, William Rodriguez, this guy has been everywhere, was even honored by George Bush himself, Mayor Giuliani, and the whole 9 yards. The guy achieves some degree of fame, I guess. A man credited with saving so many lives because he simply went through every stairwell door, opening up these doors, by the way, and I can confirm that, having been in the World Trade Center. You can't just go around in a lot of these stairwells. They're locked up for reasons, and he actually went around unlocking these doors so that people can run out of the building, go down the stairs. So incredible story on this, on William Rodriguez.
Well, you're right about that, and I guess if I should try to answer that question sarcastically that you just posed, maybe something blew up coincidentally 7 seconds before 9/11 started, but more likely it was something that had been planned. But you talk about William Rodriguez being celebrated as a 9/11 hero, and they're very happy to tell that part of his story, because it adds to the drama of it. Like when I went to Ground Zero last September 11th, and I was told by reporters when I presented the evidence that AE 9/11 Truth brings to the table, I was told by them that, we're just here to cover emotion. And so, they were very happy to use William Rodriguez in that human interest angle, but mainstream media is not very interested in this part of his story.
Absolutely. And we've said it many, many times, the censorship of this story, you couldn't make this up. And that's why this show exists. We're trying to cut through the censorship, people. The videos and the witnesses and the testimonies all speak for themselves on this. So that's the question of the week, and it's all about explosions. Now, we want to play some more explosions. I know, let's talk about this video that you sent me, Andy, the HBO cover. I want to get into that.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And this is something that was posted on Google Video 5 years ago. And does anybody remember Google Video? Because that's been kind of downplayed since Google bought YouTube. And you'll notice that there's been a major 9/11 truth purge of videos that were on Google and on YouTube 5 years ago. There's still 9/11 Truth videos on YouTube, but it's almost, as new ones are added, old ones seem to go missing. This was a rare gem to find this, but what this video shows, and we're going to have this up on 9/11 Freefall for you to watch for yourself, because it's something that, we can describe it over the radio, but seeing is believing. It shows, it poses the question, was HBO engaged in censorship of evidence of explosions on 9/11 when it put out a little documentary in 2002. Now, the name of the documentary, I believe, was In Memoriam, and it was about 9/11, and the whole premise of it was this, is that, people were filming on the streets on 9/11, from different, their own home video cameras, just, filming history taking place in front of them. So what the documentary did is it got all those amateur videos and strung them together and kind of presented this narrative of what happened on September 11th. Sounds good, right? But there's one clip in there. And the video that's going to be on 9/11 Freefall shows this, where you have two firefighters. I believe that they're firefighters, and they're on a payphone. Does anybody remember payphones? They're on a payphone on the streets, that morning, and one person is, talking to a loved one, and he says something to the effect like, "I'm okay, you want to, talk to somebody who's, to this other person." And I don't remember their exact words, but you can play the video and see that. And they hand the phone to another person, and as he starts to talk, there's an explosion off in the distance. I mean, this isn't just some minor, like a car backfiring or something like that. This is a major kapow going off. Right. And they both stop and pause. Now, that's the actual video that this person had obtained when they put this video on Google, but when HBO used this clip for its documentary In Memoriam, same thing. Starts off, the person's talking on the phone, and then he hands it off to the other person, and then it cuts right before the explosion happens. Now, if you're HBO and you want to present a really good documentary about what was going on that morning, and you want to keep your viewers interested and engaged, would you not show this particular part of it where you have an explosion going off, and you see where they cut this off. Now, I mean, people can come up with a million arguments for why this could have possibly theoretically been done, but what's the most obvious answer? It's censorship. They did not want that explosion to get into the mainstream TV. And this was in 2002. This was about a year after the event happened, and 9/11 Truth hadn't really gotten its legs yet. It wasn't out there. You didn't have as many people like me and Bernie out on the radio bringing the stuff to the public's attention. So it was a different time. The mainstream, the establishment fought it in a different way. Now they can't really ignore it like they could back then. So back then, they could just cut it out of there and hope, the public never saw the actual video of it and think that would suffice. So this is really reflective that in the beginning, especially, there was just a major effort to just cut off anything from the record that would challenge the official story.
Absolutely. And I saw the video, and amazing stuff. And a lot of people who have been pursuing knowledge about 9/11, this video, that clip actually is seen in a lot of documentaries. It's you can't confuse that clip with any other clip. It's the clip with the firefighter who's actually protecting his face with a mask, having some issues breathing, and he's on the phone, and you hear the clear boom. In fact, let's see if we can play it here. We'll play a little clip of the actual boom here.
Yeah, here's one of the guys. He can tell you I'm okay. All right. Here, hold on. You want to call your mother or something?
Right now. You gotta get back from here. You know that. You gotta get back.
All right.
I know.
Don't worry about me. You need to make calls right now. All right.
And there you go, people. We can't pose the second question of the day, can we? If we could, it would be like, what does that boom sound like? What kind of boom is that? So it sounds like an explosion to me, and it certainly sounded like explosion to a lot of firefighters and EMT and other witnesses that were there. So that is the topic today: explosions, explosions, explosions. People, we can talk about the science of 9/11. Why are they ignoring Newton's laws? We talked weeks ago as to, why are they ignoring the scientific method? And then we talked about, why would you even introduce the National Construction Safety Team Act to get around the scientific method? Why would you do that? Why would you have 9/11 commissioners disgracefully, disgusted with the commission, saying it's set up to fail, and they walked away? Why would all these things happen? And now, we're talking about explosions. Why would you have so many people saying explosions? Well, that's a question that was, before I get into the topic that I'm about to get into, I want to also point out that people have brought up the issue of, and I don't want to, there's an individual by the name of Thomas Von Essen, he was at the time, the city fire commissioner, and maybe you know more about this, Andy, but as I understand it, he essentially gave the green light for the fire department to record the event, to interview firefighters. So he sort of gave the okay and initiated essentially the process of having firefighters interview on camera or in the form of recordings or whatever you want to, any other form, where a lot of firefighters and rescue workers actually interviewed. And it turns out that these interviews would be a big part of what we're talking about today, and a big part of the 9/11 Truth Movement, and a big part of solidifying and confirming the science of 9/11. And some have said that Mr. Essen, Thomas Von Essen, that his decision would ultimately turn out to be a historic decision. Some have said that he is, in that sense, a hero. Others have, of course, accused him of having foreknowledge, perhaps. We're not going to go either way with that one, but I will say, at least speak for myself, that if he made this decision, or this decision was made as somewhere along the lines in the fire department of New York to make these recordings. And these firefighters were subsequently interviewed about what they heard and what they saw. And these interviews are central to the argument of 9/11 truth. They confirmed the 9/11 science. And anyway, just a word on that. I just wanted to kind of throw that out there because a lot of people have been asking about these interviews. We know that there was a lot of these interviews were collected together in what was some sort of 12,000-page document that was released back then. I believe it was published in August of 2006. These interviews, 12,000 pages of interviews, and just hearing just all laid out. And this caught the attention of David Ray Griffin, who's a 9/11 scholar and a researcher. And David Ray Griffin mentioned that in his report years ago called The Explosive Testimonies. It was an article that he put together. This article and this whole topic of these 12,000 pages of explosions and testimonies also caught the eye of a gentleman by the name of Graeme MacQuee, who we hope to have on here next week or very, very soon, hopefully. We've put out an invitation for Graeme MacQuee to come on the show and talk more about this. But Graeme MacQuee, essentially, he reads up on all the things that David Ray Griffin had said. And David Ray Griffin put the number of witnesses to explosions at about 31. Which is striking. And then Graeme MacQuee apparently sees this and decides to do his own research. And I found it interesting, and we'll play some clips from that in a minute, that Graeme MacQuee kind of approached it from more of a scientific standpoint. He's decided to start accounting for some more elements and maybe, I guess they call it confounds in the statistics, to kind of weed out some issues that may or may not affect the results. So he ends up eliminating any ambiguous testimony. If someone says, I heard a boom, he actually counted that as not being an explosion. Talk about meticulous. So, I mean, I don't know about you, Andy, but if somebody's talking to me and they said they heard a boom, I would count that as a explosion. And he didn't. He actually eliminated anything that may have been ambiguous and to err on the side of caution. How nice is that? And the next thing he does is he counts how many actual witnesses. He reads through this report and he counted. And the last thing that he did, or he kind of explains it in 3 steps, he looks for any other evidence that might refute the hypothesis of explosions, of controlled demolition, and the use of explosives. So something NIST has never done. They actually created their own hypothesis and ran with it and wouldn't even look at the most likely hypothesis. So Graeme MacQuee actually does it the right way, the scientific method way. You always want to consider opposing hypotheses. You don't want to get cornered in your own hypothesis wanting to believe what you think it is. You want to give a chance to the other side. Maybe it wasn't explosions. So he took that into account. After all the work, and again, hopefully we'll have him talking about this, incredibly, he finds out, he discovers that over 118, or about 118 witnesses actually heard explosions, and it supported the explosion hypothesis. Let's listen into some parts of this.
David Ray Griffin had published an article, Explosive Testimony. He had gone through enough of this material to pull out some pretty dramatic cases where the firefighters said that they perceived explosions, and that these weren't minor explosions. These were major explosions, which these firefighters clearly thought had brought down the towers. So I was impressed, but I realized right away that I wanted to read those 12,000 pages for myself, because there were 3 things that Griffin didn't do that I wanted to do. This isn't a criticism of his pioneering work, it's just a way of saying there's a need for part 2.
Demand urgent. Number 2 has had a major explosion and what appears to be a complete collapse surrounding the entire area.
When we hit the 19th floor, something horrendous happened. It was like a bomb went off. We thought we were dead. The whole building shook. The door to the hallway into the hotel blew off like somebody had thrown it all over the place. We were thrown on the floor. The building was still shaking, and we're still hearing explosions going on everywhere. So we decided let's get out of here.
We made it outside. We made it about a block.
We made it at least 2 blocks, and we started running. Floor by floor, it started popping out.
It was like, if they had detonated.
Detonated.
They were planned to take down a building. Boom, 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 boom.
All the way down. I was watching it and running.
That noise, it was a noise. Question, what did you hear? What did you see? Answer, it was a frigging noise. At first I thought it was... Do you ever see professional demolition when they set the charges on certain floors and then you hear pop, 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 pop? That's exactly what, because I thought it was that. When I heard that frigging noise, that's when I saw the building coming down. I thought that when I looked in the direction of the Trade Center before it came down, before number 2 came down, that I saw low-level flashes. In my conversation with Lieutenant Evangelista, never mentioning this to him, he questioned me and asked me if I saw low-level flashes in front of the building, and I agreed with them. I saw a flash, 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 and then it looked like the building came down. Oh, the lower level of the building. You know, like when they demolish a building, how when they blow up a building, when it falls down, that's what I thought I saw. Somewhere around the middle of the World Trade Center, there was this orange and red flash coming out. Initially, it was just one flash. Then this flash just kept popping all the way around the building, and that building had started to explode. The popping sound. And with each popping sound, it was initially an orange, and then a red flash came out of the building, and then it would just go all around the building on both sides as far as I could see. These popping sounds and the explosions were getting bigger, going both up and down and then all around the building. I went inside and told everybody, I think we have another major explosion. We made it around the corner, and that's when the shit hit the fan, right then and there. We heard that loud ba-boom. It was like an earthquake or whatever, a giant, giant explosion. Then this big gust came, and I just went flying maybe 30, 40 feet, tumbling. I got up, got on my hands and knees, because all of that white shit was all over me. I just kept crawling. My ears were like deaf, you know.
And there you go, people. Amazing testimonies. Quite a bit of work by Graeme MacQuee putting together this research, just focusing on the testimonies of anyone who heard explosions. It's just amazing how one testimony after another confirms explosives and controlled demolition. Some 2% total gave any sort of testimony that would even remotely support the official theory of what happened, Andy.
If there's any lesson in this for anybody, it's that if anything ever like this happens again, don't stand there petrified and swallowing official story propaganda from your television set. Start recording everything and start seeing what people say in the moment, because in the heat of the moment, they don't necessarily know that their career will be jeopardized by telling the truth. And if you look at like the video we were talking about before, there's dialogue. I mean, you can hear people talking and describing explosions from their ambulance gurney, talking about what they heard. And there's one clip in there where firefighters are talking, and one said there's a bomb in the building, start clearing out. And the other person says, I'm sorry, you said there's a bomb? And then the firefighter repeats it again. He punctuates it, says there's a bomb in the building, clear out. And we're not telling you there was explosions. We played an explosion for you earlier in this broadcast, so you heard explosions from September 11th as well.
Andy, let's play that clip right now, just for our audience. Anybody who just joined us, listen in. Let's listen to the firefighters talking about there is a bomb in the building. Play it.
Bomb in the building, start clearing out. Sorry, you said there's a bomb? What'd you say? Bomb in the building, start clearing out. Got it.
Incredible stuff, huh? These guys are right there on the scene. There is a bomb in a building. There's plenty of other clips. Amazing. This is what 9/11 Truth is all about, people. This is one of those events. It's amazing. You could have any other event, and if somebody says something, it goes recorded, and people... it is what it is. If we had just another event and someone said, I saw someone do something or I heard this, it goes in the records and everyone takes your word for it. You know what you saw. When you have 118 individuals, and again, that's just this one study with Graeme MacQuee. There have been other studies that have been done, and we can get into that maybe in the future, but just this one study that we're focusing on, 118 witnesses, firefighters, EMT workers, rescue workers, interviewed people that were there, all heard what they believe 100% was explosions. And another thing is, Andy, I want to say this. I mean, with this explosion clip that we just played, I want to add myself to the 118 because even though we weren't there, but if anyone has internet and YouTube and video and you can play, you also hear what sounds like an explosion. It's not just those guys. We're part of that group too. Anyone can play this video and make their decision. What do you think that sounds like? And I've been in the military for 4 years, and I can tell you right now, that's an explosion.
Well, it is. And we're going to have that up on 9/11 Freefall for people to watch, and you can also see HBO's censorship of that. And, and we also have our own copy of it, so if the video somehow disappears from Google Video, it'll be back up on YouTube, lickety-split. So we'll get that back up.
Amazing that we have to even talk that way, right? That we have to worry about a video disappearing. That tells you all you need to know about this battle of information that we are in. People regularly we're having to deal with censorship and lack of accountability and just stonewalling of the truth of 9/11 because nothing supports the official story. There's little to no support whatsoever from any angle that you look at it. Whether you're talking videos, whether you're talking eyewitnesses, whether we're talking about the scientific method, I can't think of anything that supports the official story other than these computer model simulations that put together by NIST. And a lot of several people walked away from the 9/11 Commission, so it's hard to say, what the official story is grounded on. It just has no legs whatsoever.
Well, it doesn't. And, in the audience, we've been doing this for many weeks, and 9/11 Truth and AE 9/11 Truth have been going for several years now. And, all our evidence is right out there in the public domain. It's not even something that we're have under a lock and key and we'll present to you under controlled conditions or anything like that. Anybody with a computer can look up this stuff on the internet and watch it for themselves and actually hear the arguments and roll it around in their own brains. Now, that's us versus National Institute of Standard and Technology that refuses to release its computer model data, citing some undefined public safety issue. Okay? So, you need to use your common sense, but we make the case every single week, but it's gotten to the point where just making the case and the scientific evidence presenting it isn't enough. We need to take this out into the streets, and we need to start screaming our heads off about it and bringing it to as many people's attention as possible.
Absolutely. And I guess for me, I always like to be on a winning team. Who doesn't? And I guess everyone has a different definition of winning, and to me, I've never had anyone present any solid, reasonable evidence to support the official story. And I've been in this battle for several years now, and I wanted to believe the official story, and a lot of people like us, we wanted to believe the official story. That's why it took us a while. Those of you that are listening to us, you've heard of interview Jonathan Cole. We've interviewed David Chandler. It's amazing. We've got other people that we've interviewed, David Schlesinger, Wayne Koss. You hear these gentlemen talk about how they saw what happened. In particular, when we're talking about David Chandler and Jonathan Cole, these scientists, where they saw what happened, they something felt a little strange about it, but something else jumped out at them. In the case of David Chandler, it was the ejections of debris flying out at a horizontal angle of the building and just perpendicular to the building, just flying out horizontally at over 60 miles an hour. You can try and conceal explosions at first, but it's not going to work for very long when you have people that think. And that's what woke him up. And we talked with John Cole and how he observed that the system and the government was taking advantage of this narrative. Within minutes, they already knew that bin Laden somehow did it. Just whatever it takes to wake people up, and we've seen this played out so many times, people. And we talk about this. I want to remind the audience that the reason this topic is so important, if anyone is paying attention to the news, it's just amazing how they've not only ignored the truth of 9/11 and ignored the science and all the witnesses that heard and saw explosions, and they're ignoring all of this and selling their story through the mainstream media and through Hollywood and through the notion, as I call it, of social acceptance. In other words, there are so many people out there that you can talk to them about this issue and they will agree with you. Everyone has their own experience. My experience, Andy, is that when I speak to people at the street level, most people are aware that the official story is untrue. They know that it didn't happen the way that we were told, but yet the majority of those people that are well aware of this, of the story of 9/11, the official story not being true, the majority of them are not active in 9/11 truth. They've essentially learned to accept this, even though they themselves know that they're being lied to. And I offer the possibility and the suggestion that this is happening because people don't want to be socially outcast. They don't want to be the odd man or the odd woman out in a crowd, at work perhaps, or wherever they go. People want to fit in. So it's amazing how they played this card where people want to fit in, and just by wanting to fit in, they're agreeing to ignore this evidence. The dead body in the freezer, as you put it, is amazing, isn't it?
Well, you're right, but what it comes down to for each individual is, asking yourself, what kind of person am I? Are you, and I'm telling this to the listener right now, ask yourself, are you the type of person that if you walked in and saw something bad going on, if you saw your spouse cheating on you, you walked into the room, you turned on the light, are you the type of person who will turn out the light and turn around and pretend you didn't see it? And there are people like that out there. Okay, and that's part of the problem. But you talk about people not wanting to be a social outcast. Since when did we as a nation worry about this kind of stuff? And you got to look at history in terms of not just year by year, but you look at it by decades. But think about the type of people that we come from. Our ancestors, the people who conquered the wilderness, the people who survived the Great Depression. We did not become the America that we think we are right now by worrying about the collective, about worrying about opinions of what people think about me. It was rugged individuals. It was people speaking out for themselves and acting for themselves. And what do our ancestors have to say about us now? About us, those of us like I see at political rallies over the weekend who are out there waving a flag and talking about America in terms that really do not apply to us anymore. It's the body in the basement, in the freezer, laying there right now as we go on and try to pretend like we're living some kind of normal lifestyle in the house above it. We cannot move on as a nation until we acknowledge this truth, and this is why we need you out there speaking the truth, and you need to shrug off the opinions of other people, because those other people that are criticizing you now, when this truth takes hold, they're going to pretend like they were behind you 100% later on. Absolutely, that is so true. People will just wait for the time to be right. A lot of people are afraid to step up and be the change until they see other people doing it, and then they conveniently then step up and do it. I'm reminded of a phrase that Mark Twain once said, and he said, in the beginning of a change, I'll say that again, in the beginning of a change, the patriot is a scarce man, and
brave and hated and scorned. And when his cause succeeds, the timid join him, for then it costs nothing to be a patriot. And that was once said by Mark Twain, and boy, how true is that today?
Well, yeah, I mean, that pretty much sums up the situation that we're in now. And the fact is, this truth is going to come out because it's so obvious. It's documented from every angle, and anybody that looks at it honestly will have to arrive to this conclusion. The science proves it, folks. And, you ask, where's NIST proof? They're hiding their computer model data behind laws that were passed, conveniently after September 11th, where our stuff is out in the open. We've proved it. We've got weeks and weeks of broadcasts where we present the evidence, but it's not just our show. I mean, it's greater volumes of information in the work of other activists and other organizations that have documented it and proved it. It's all out there, but it's the big festering corpse lying underneath our floorboards.
It's that septic system you're talking about, absolutely. And, I want to put out my personal call to everyone listening to the show. If you're listening to me right now and you care about what is right and what is wrong, I ask you to please look at the evidence. Please just look at the evidence and think on your own. The mainstream media and Hollywood is not an evidence platform. They're not. In some cases they are, right? Because if we listen to a lot of those the day of the event, boy, we could hear a lot of people telling us the evidence. We're talking about Peter Jennings and Dan Rather and a lot of other media correspondents on the day of the event. They were speaking truth. They were letting you know this looks like a controlled demolition. If you listen to Dan Rather and Peter Jennings, and they're saying it like it is. But at one point, somewhere along the line, the media sold out and they shut the doors on the truth of 9/11. So, but aside from that early stage, relaying to us what was happening in real time, those events now you can't talk about. But we do know the truth, and we cannot rely on the media. I ask everyone listening to me again, take a moment, look at the evidence, think on your own, pull out that physics textbook, read about Newton's laws, think it through, look at these computer model simulations, see what you think about an organization that has a self-interest, part of the United States Department of Commerce, that NIST I'm referring to, National Institute of Standards and Technology, and where they literally create their own computer model simulations and put out Cheyenne Sunder out there to tell us that this is science and to tell us that they have all the answers, including how World Trade Center 7 fell, which fell at 5:20, not hit by any plane whatsoever, and they want us to believe that this incredibly symmetric collapse, this free fall collapse for the first 100 feet, and the rest of the way is near free fall, and go straight down to the ground symmetrically, how this was created by office fires. So everyone listening to my voice, you're going to believe Cheyenne Sunder and NIST and their computer model simulations, or are you going to believe your own consciousness and your own science textbooks and these hundreds of witnesses and what we're talking about, what we're presenting every week here. And with that, we're running out of time. So this is it. Again, this is 9/11 Freefall. Check out ae911truth.org if you want to get educated on the science of 9/11, and check out 9/11 Freefall if you want to catch up on one of our other programs from the past. Until next week, this is Bernie Suarez with Andy Steele saying goodbye. Take care and have a great night.